Hi, as some of you may have noticed, I've disappeared for the past week. I apologize, but I promise it was for a good reason. As most of you can tell from the title and the thumbnail of this video, I actually won the golden ticket and I'm going to be representing Greece in the finals happening in Spain. Today, I'm just going to be yapping about what I faced in the tournament for the golden ticket and what my list was and how it came to be, giving a bit of insight on what my goals were and was my logic behind my decisions in my list and gameplay. It's not gonna go too in depth, so that's that. I'm really excited, so let's get into it. Also, as you can see, I think in the background, my room is a complete mess from all the preparations I had to go through, so I apologize for that as well. So, to begin with, I want to start from the fact that I was having terrible anxiety for a week prior to the tournament, making and remaking my list constantly. I wanted everything in it, and then suddenly everything became redundant, swapping out units and then deleting my lists altogether. Um, so, yeah, but to also give a brief explanation on my thought process, I will have to talk about my country's players and meta. First of all, I personally believe that the overall average skill level of my community is quite high. We don't have 500 players or something playing every day or every week, but the couple dozens we do have are overall really skilled players. So I knew going in that this was not going to be an easy tournament, obviously. We have really aggressive and oppressive armies in our community, and you'd have to play with great precision to have a chance to win. So here are the armies I was expecting and kind of nervous to face. And through these expectations, uh, is how my list came to be. So, first of all, I was expecting a really good and very skilled friend of mine to bring one of the following three, which were all great armies and great lists overall. Uh, the first army I was expecting to face was a Khorne army with the helmets of Hashut Regiment of Renown with the cannons and the rocket batteries. A list that has become increasingly dominant recently, even winning a GT. Uh, so that was the first expectation I had to face. The other one was a pure healthsmiths of Hashut army, with a lot of shooting and strong melee with bull centaurs and with Uraktar. Or the third possibility, and which this ended up being what I had to fight, spoiler alert, was a Soulblight Gravelord's army with lots of vampires. A very strong and oppressive melee force. Secondly, and this is the army I was the most scared to fight, was a Disciples of Zinch army from one of the best Zinch players I've seen. I will talk about the matches themselves later on, so you can stick around for that. Another one I had to keep in mind was another very good player, having either Sylvaneth or Lumineth, both some of the top winning armies currently. So yeah, nothing was free in this tournament. Um, and lastly, I was nervous about Caradron Overlords, an army that, funnily enough, is commonly represented in our meta with overall 3 players. Which might not sound a lot, but for an army that is not very popular and that is very, how can I put it, very mobile and weird in its playstyle, 3 players in a small community are quite a lot. So, with that in mind, I wanted to make a list that could fight well in close combat for Khorne, Swordblight, or Elves, be able to shoot with reliable shooting to face off any debuffs from both KO and Zinch, the -1 to hit, not being able to shoot outside 12, and be numerous enough to be able to take lots of objectives, because at the end of the day, tournaments are objectives and point games, not just go and kill everything. Even though most of the time that's what happens. Obviously, my first choice for my list was the Scourge of Gairan Screaming Bell, which I equipped with Foulhide for extra survivability, especially versus units with lots of shooting, Hellsmiths, the Cannons, Caradron Overlords. Maybe if Zinch would have taken more shooting, that would have been a problem. Both Sylvaneth, those things are very easy to pick off Screaming Bell. This unit was this unit is, not was, one of the best units in our roster. Very cost efficient, just great overall for both buffs, debuffs, and combat, which it surprisingly does really well. And also being a 2-cast wizard, which is amazing. Shout out to my tier list for Skaven, whatever. Then I had to add screens to stop any first strike attacks from either the Enlightened Jungers on discs, any Bloodthirsters, Drycha, Bull Centaurs, any frigates with Skywardens, getting strike first and stuff, Blood Knights, all that jazz. So the best choice were 2 units of Clan Rats, of 20 Clan Rats, which might not sound a lot, but with a 5-up save and D3 recursion, made them kind of defensible versus poke shooting as well, so they're not killed off before a unit strikes in. Okay, so now we have our 2/5 of the army done, but we still had nothing actually substantial in the list. We didn't have any damage, no shooting, no actual oppressive units. So I needed, at the end of the day, I needed units that can hide in obscuring terrain and be able to bring back through my no-holes. So no Doomflayers, no monsters, no war machines. I wanted something to justify its points in the long term, because if something dies off, I want to bring it back. That basically halves the cost of the unit. So these things are not cost efficient enough to justify their existence in the list. I had to bring only infantry from now on. I had seen a list that did really well with a Plague Furnace, 12 Rat Ogres with a Bruter, a Screaming Bell, and 3 Storm Fiends. But I didn't want a Bruter, I didn't want a Plague Furnace, because all of these things are really easy to kill off with poke or shooting, which this tournament I expected to have a lot of. So I took the only useful information from this list I could find. Rat Ogres are really good. They shoot well, fight well, they are cheap and can be brought back. So that was amazing for me. I got 12 of them in 2 units of 6. I had to have them be a force to be reckoned with, so they can be distracting enough for the opponent to not focus down my bell. I couldn't put just 2 units of 3 and then a unit of 6, because 2 units of 3 are killed off by just the screen, and that's not dangerous enough for my opponent to be distracted by. So 2 units of 6 was, I think, the sweet spot for him. Also, an obvious choice for this list so far was also a Master Molder to help with healing any damage my units took and make charges a bit easier. And I also gave him Devious Underling, so my army could have a ward, which is pretty self-explanatory why I would want that. But there was also a more devious reason for that. I knew my opponents would try to kill the Screaming Bell as soon as possible to prevent any more debuffs from aiding my army. So instead of trying to stop the inevitable, I tried to exploit it and capitalize on it. If the opponent killed the bell, pretty much, my whole army would have a +2 to charge, which would mean every unit I wanted to connect with something would have a greater chance to do so, especially my molder units with the master molder giving them a +1. That could potentially lead to a +3 to charge. Um, so that was my scheming on why I wanted the trait. Finally, I wanted something to be able to hit the backline. Every army has something that wants to keep safe and away from fights. Those exact units are the ones I want dead. So, what's the best unit for that, you ask? Um, Obviously, Stormfiends. 2 units of Stormfiends, a unit of 6, and a unit of 3. They are undetectable for shooting because they're in deep strike. They're really resilient, great fighters, and overall perfect for what I wanted them to do. So that was essentially my list: a Screaming Bell, a Master Molder, 12 Rat Ogres, 9 Stormfiends, and 40 Clan Rats. Uh, there are a lot of wounds on the table, lots of shooting, lots of spell casting, tanky enough, they were just fine. The day of the tournament came, and I was kind of scared to see who I faced first. Secretly, I had hoped for an easy first match, to be honest, so I could warm up a little bit and get ready for the rest of the tournament and maybe get a free win out of it or get an advantage for the rest of the day. But that would prove impossible to happen. As to my great dismay, I matched up with my friend who came with Soulblight. He had a really strong list with Vordrai, 10 Blood Knights, a bunch of Askurgan, which are awful to face against. I think they're really OP right now. A Coven Throne and a Vengorian Lord with 3 Vargeist and 10 Skeletons. This list is very strong, and if it gets even a little bit ahead, it's almost impossible to be stopped. And since I had less drops, I allowed him to go first. So he would get a bit. So he would approach a little bit, get a bit closer to my threat ranges for shooting, spells, etc. But to also be able to drop my 6 Stormfiends in his turn, which would allow them to move in my turn as normal, which is going to be a trend in this tournament. You're gonna hear about that later on. So most things went according to plan and according to what I expected. Thankfully, my army wasn't destroyed. I positioned everything pretty well, so nothing really got demolished. And my only real loss was a unit of clan rats and a few other kinds of minor damages here and there, but nothing too crippling. I managed to strike last, to use the spell strike last on my turn on his buffed Blood Knights from Vordrai, giving them a +1 damage. They instantly shot up to a real threat for me, so I wanted them gone and basically crippled. So on my turn, I collapsed with everything. I shot down my other 3 Stormfiends, and I charged with whatever I could, wherever I could. So I killed Vordrai on the first round and crippled the Blood Knights and locked them up in combat basically for the rest of the game. The next round was basically a bit of rumbling around the middle of the board, but nothing insane actually happened. And I managed to win for a very close 5 points, and the game was over due to time limits. That was a very close game, and thankfully I managed to win and move on to the second round of the tournament, which, to my even greater dismay, was against the Disciples of Zinch player. he played a very strong list with Zangors, Enlightened, and Skyfires, with Kairos, Fate Weaver, Kersling, and K-Spawn, and 3 units of Carrick Acolytes. Um, Again, I allowed him to go first in anticipation of many shenanigans from Zinch with teleportation and reactive movements. Zinch is a very hated army for me because it has basically an answer for everything. You will not have an easy day fighting a good Zinch player. It's always gonna be a headache, always gonna be a pain in the ass. So I was not really ecstatic about that. He carefully charged a unit of Enlightened, which of course annihilated a unit of my screening clan rats. Um, but unfortunately for him, and very luckily for me, there were a few small gaps in the defense of his backline. And with my deep striking Stormfiends, um, I took great advantage from that and managed to kill off a unit of Carrick Acolytes screening Kairos and his Kersling. And with a very lucky long charge, I managed to kill both Kairos and his Kersling, which carried his recursion trait, basically shutting down all of his recursion, most of his reliable casting, and that was just with a unit of 6 Stormfiends. Um, then I just collapsed with the rest of my army, all on the rest of his units, locking them up in combat and basically crippling them to a point that the game was basically over. Very lucky indeed. I was really hesitant going into the second round. I really thought this was gonna be the end of me. Narrowly winning the first game, and now that it was insane. And with that, I was off to the finals, in which I would face Caradron Overlords, as again I anticipated. Another of my most feared matchups. In all regards, this would be my toughest opponent this would be my toughest opponents for a tournament ever. I've played a lot of tournaments, and I have never had this lineup of opponents before, so that was not gonna be an easy win. On deployment, I deployed very stretched out with units taking cover wherever they could in every obscuring terrain I could find. Thankfully, the mission was really forest dense, so we had a lot of obscuring terrain to help me out, and yeah, so I deployed very stretched out, and my opponent basically played with 2 Ironclads, 20 Arcanaut Company, Gotrek, 6 Sky Wardens, an Admiral, and another hero, which I don't remember the name of. A very strong list with very good shooting. It would basically, um, this list would basically obliterate me if I positioned wrong, even for a mere second. I knew he wanted to kill my bell first thing, so I took as many precautions as I could, and he went first again since I controlled the initiative, and thus the final game began. Uh, Miraculously, I didn't actually lose anything. No unit actually died, and my bell survived on 1 HP with the use of a very lucky redeploy, getting outside the ranges of the one of the ironclads from for the small guns. The long cannons, I couldn't avoid them, so I just braced for impact. My belt, yeah, survived on 1 HP, and I managed to lock in combat one of the ships early on, which meant that basically I had only one ship to worry about, and some heroes were left in the backfield. This would prove imperative since the other ship was on a quadrant on one of the quadrants of the map, and thus kind of easy to lock out of the game with my Stormfiends. The game was just a slow grind through the high armor of the ships. Apart from that, I won in the most efficient way you can win versus a Caradron army: board control and calculated sacrifice. Um, with shooting heavy armies, you cannot win unscathed. You have to sacrifice things, and units are going to die, and you're going to have to be okay with that. Um, just make sure you control the board and make it difficult for the opponent to go where they want to go. So yeah, that's that. That's how I won the golden ticket, and how I will be going to Spain for the World Finals, representing Greece. Since we haven't had any good Age of Sigmar representation recently for our country, I hope I can provide that. And I'm really excited, and I have to thank everyone in my community, and especially uh, my sponsor for the trip, basically, Fantasy Shop, and for who I'm eternally grateful for. That means I'll be back on schedule to make tactic videos for Skaven really soon. So yeah, stick around for that. Thanks for watching, everyone, and yeah, see you soon.